Hello there and welcome to this vlog of October 2023, and in today's video I just want to give a quick update on Legions Imperialis. Now first and foremost, this is obviously a BattleTech channel, but given that Legions Imperialis is probably going to be a pretty hefty rival to BattleTech, I think it's something that we really do need to keep on our radar. Not least of all because it's something that I am actually keen on getting. As much as I am very much a loyal BattleTech fanboy, I do play a lot of Games Workshop games and have a lot of Games Workshop miniatures and books and terrain and everything else. And I've got no problem at all having two tabletop lovers, if you want to put it that way. I suppose for me it would probably be Blood Bowl and BattleTech. They're kind of my two staples. But I do play a lot of Games Workshop stuff as well. Like I loved First Iteration Kill Team, and I really like their old classic-y games as well. Of which Epic was something I used to play a lot as a kid. Much more than BattleTech actually, because it was much easier to get Epic, which was the old version of Legions Imperialis. I'll probably use those two terms interchangeably. So yeah, Legions Imperialis equals Epic. I've got no problem with that. I think competition is healthy. In the gaming space, it's very, very healthy. I think it's good for CGL that's Catalyst Game Labs, who basically the custodians of BattleTech. I think it's good for them to kind of have a very, very big firm like Games Workshop pretty much hot on their heels. Likewise, I think it's very good for Games Workshop to see these new companies getting into the market like Catalyst. I say new, they've been around quite a while, but challenger companies is what I'm saying. 5 years ago, Catalyst won't have been on Games Workshop's radar. Now they certainly are. So we had some, we got some news in the summer that they were going to basically pull the trigger and do Epic. I wasn't surprised by that, given how successful the last BattleTech Kickstarter was. That the Kickstarter was obviously back in spring. The news dropped on Epic in the summer, so they'd clearly seen that there was a huge appetite for that. I mean, I call it 6mm. I think Epic is probably in 8-9mm, but whatever, that kind of epic scale war game. So I think good for all parties concerned. When we got the drops of the products as well, I did a video at the time, and I thought the imagery that we got then looked really, really nice. They have the little Space Marines on the stands, and it's all in very small scale, so you get the big buildings and I don't know that lore very well, but what I would call Titans from back in the day. I think now it might be more like Imperial Knights. There were problems though, and what I want to run through today is some of the issues that have subsequently been found out on this upcoming release. So I'll basically just go through this in order, and then I want to kind of discuss my personal journey with this and my feelings on it, and why I think Games Workshop might have missed the boat a little bit now. But I'll just rattle through this all anyway, and we can just have a think about that then in terms of how this is going to be positioned over the next year. So the first thing to say is that there were a lot of complaints when Epic, Legions, Imperialis, whatever, when it dropped, that it was just it was exclusively based on the Imperial forces and set in the Horus Heresy. So for those of you that don't know, just a quick synopsis on that one. Warhammer 40,000 is set 38,000 years in the future. This 6mm game though will be in 30,000, so 28,000 years in the future, and this is the crux or the pinpoint of everything that happens in that universe. Much like in BattleTech, you'd say that it's the Imaris Civil War, or the fall of the Star League, that kind of pivot era, which basically then everything else really springs from. Obviously, there are other things as well. So you could say the creation of the mechs is a fundamental part, but I don't think anyone would argue the fact that the fall of the Star League and the Amera's Civil War, and that is basically what sets up all the game. That then really kind of starts in that like 3025 end of the Succession War era. Warhammer 30,000 is kind of very similar. It basically tracks the story of how the legions of the Space Marines, basically like half of them fell to chaos and half of them remained loyal to the Emperor. And you know, it's a very, very interesting setting. I do love those books as well, or I love the ones that I've not read that many of them, but I certainly read like the original Graham Neal trilogy, which is a really, really good book, well, good series of books actually. It stands up to anything in terms of the BattleTech trilogies. So, you know, yeah, I mean Graham Neal, I think is his name. Not read any of his books for ages, but I think that's him. Yeah, he's a very good writer. I think there might be another writer in there as well. Is it Dan Abbott? I think he might have done like the second one on that, but I can't remember. Anyway, so effectively then, just focusing in on this era, straight away people started to get chippy. They were like, oh, well, you know, we're not having any aliens, so we're not having like the Eldar or the Orcs or, you know, the Tyranids or anything else. We're just going to keep it to like the Imperial forces. Games Workshop categorically confirmed that as well. I think they did like a Q&A, and it was like, yeah, we're just going to do like the Space Marines and the Titans. I found that disappointing at the time. Not like, you know, nothing puts a stopper on it. So if this really hits off and makes lots of money and does very well, I'm absolutely sure that the Games Workshop will start to introduce like the alien forces as like expansion packs. But right off the back, I mean, it just looks very much like concentrated on the Imperial powers. That is obviously the kind of mainstay of Games Workshop's products as well. And, you know, if you kind of follow their kind of track of releases, everything is based around like the Space Marine 40k release. So buys into that absolutely. And I've got no problem with them doing that, you know, as like a tester. It was just slightly disappointing because my old like Epic collection, I had like loads of derpy orc mechs and stuff like that. And obviously with the Imperial forces, it's much less like colourful. It's much more like, you know, I don't know. It just doesn't seem as like wacky and interesting as old Epic. In a way, like, this is going to sound a bit controversial, but because BattleTech is a tabletop game, and I mean this almost like as a positive thing, but it's quite boring, right? And what I mean by that is like it's not got like loads of alien races and wacky designs. Like the mechs all look like, you know, like pretty much how you would expect like a military complex to design something. You do get more elaborate designs, like when the clans come into it, they've got like their own staple design ethos, and certain inner sphere powers do that as well. But generally speaking, it's a very like rooted in like the real world game is BattleTech. So that to me is, and I love that about BattleTech, don't get me wrong, but if I wanted to do Epic, I'd really want it to be quirky, to be like a countermeasure to that. So there you go. Anyway, so that was kind of the big moan at the time. Subsequently, we found out there's been a pretty hefty delay in proceedings. So it was originally meant to go live in August, but there are now rumours coming out that they've had all manner of like publication issues, potential shipping issues, potential printing issues. This is kind of a weird thing for Games Workshop, and I don't know if this is right, but this is my understanding of it, and I think I've kind of picked this up just from, you know, reading stuff around the industry. So Games Workshop get all their plastic products, or certainly the vast majority of them, made in their factory out in Nottingham. I know that factory very well because I live about 5 miles away from it, and I often travel to Birmingham with work. And when you get in the Nottingham to Birmingham train, you can see the Games Workshop, like the back end of it from that train. If you're ever on that train and you're coming from Nottingham, just look to the right. When you get past a little town called Beeston, you'll see they've got. I think they've got like the Imperial Eagle on the back of the warehouse, but you can see just how big that premises is, right? It's a huge like complex. They've got a lot of like obviously like warehouse space and like factory space. My understanding is though that they get all their printing and all the cardboard boxes and everything else, pretty sure all that gets made overseas. Now, I'm guessing it's in Asia, probably China, but I'm not 100% sure. So what you'll find is that if you go into if you had like a walk around the Nottingham, offices, you'd probably find loads of like sprues for Epic just like hanging around, because they're probably all done. It was meant for an August release. It's just they don't have like the rule book and the cardboard box to ship it in and everything else. There are also rumours going around that they've had like issues with like quality control on the book. I'm actually very glad that they'll put a delay in if they've seen that, because far too many companies just rush to release. So I've got no problem with just them like delaying it for a little bit to kind of sort that out. So that's the kind of update, I suppose, on a practical level in terms of where we're at with the product. The issue, though, and this is what this video what I really wanted to focus on today, was how they needed to strike when the iron was hot, if they wanted to kind of go in hard on the BattleTech, like as a rival to BattleTech and getting into that like epic scale warfare. And I don't think the delay is going to do them any favours at all. And I think it's a shame for them that it has happened. I can imagine that people at CGL are actually quite delighted, because this was purposefully lined up for a pre-Christmas release. You would have had people like me then potentially put in, and I'm guessing that this game would have cost about £250. That's usually kind of the amount that you'll get for like a starter set from Games Workshop. I can't be sure. That might be 50 quid less than that. Might be 50 quid more. I'm not sure. But that's 300 between 200 and 300 pounds that I'm probably then not going to spend with Catalyst. In my case, I'm stupid. I probably would have spent it all, with both companies, the same of what I would have spent anyway. But I think most people, they're just going to have to use the opportunity cost on that. Like, do I go in for Epic, or do our Legion Imperialis, or do I get those BattleTech forces that I want, or whatever, or save that money back, because BattleTech will be going like to retail next year on the new Kickstarter, and then there might be a lot of things that I want to get after that juncture. Now, though, I think they've kind of missed their prime time like retail slot. So again, I think people at CGL will be like, I'm not saying they'll be like popping champagne corks about it, but it's just one less thing for them to think about in terms of their like commercial market. Another issue that they have, though, and this is what I really wanted to discuss today, was like the marketing side of it, and almost like the business development side of it, and how the customer work in this. And I think I'm talking just about in Britain here, but I am probably like top 100 demographic for this new game, right? If you want to pinpoint individuals in Britain who would be looking at this with interest, I am kind of one of the poster children for that, right? Like, I have got, again, not to go too far into my personal situation, but I have got good disposable income, right? I am 40 years old. I grew up with Games Workshop games. So, like, if they kind of are going to put, like, a poster child for someone who is going to be into the hobby, I am in that demographic. And because I'm such, like, a huge BattleTech user, on the grounds that, I spend thousands with them, I run, the vodcast with DFA. I've got my own YouTube channel dedicated to BattleTech. So, I would certainly, I think, be in that top percentile. This is how I look at it, though, and this is where I think I'm a good, like, I suppose, touch point commercially, or as like a market resource or research, whatever you want to say, in terms of looking at this. And I've talked about this on my channel quite a bit before, in previous videos, that I always equate hobby to, like, there are basically three things that you can use as a metric, and that's time, space, and money, right? I think that's someone who does quite a bit of project management, I think that is kind of like universal anyway for most things, but for hobby particularly, I think that really does kind of matter. So again, I'll quickly fly through those because I've not done it for probably a couple of years, but they're all quite obvious. Yeah, like time is obvious. Do you have the time to sit and do the hobby, to play the games, to do the modelling, to do the painting? That time like vastly decreases if you have got a career job, or if you've got a young family, or even if you've got an old family, or if you're a carer for somebody or whatever else. That time can be really, really stretched. Another factor, though, is money. And like anything in life, if you have got unlimited funds, you can just basically throw the unlimited funds at something to fix the problem in a short term. You can do that absolutely for hobby. You could spend £20,000 on getting like everything across the hobby, and then spend probably £15,000 to £20,000 paying professional painters to paint it all for you. Right? You could do that. You absolutely could do that. So, you know, I'm not in that category. Wish I was. In fact, no, I don't wish I was, because I love the hobby side of it. So yeah, I should be quiet really, because that's not what I want to be. But if you have the kind of the money to do it, you can absolutely go that front. Obviously, for the vast majority of people, that isn't the case. The vast majority of people will probably have between, again, ballpark figures here, they might have between $50 and $800 a month to spend on hobby. That's kind of how I equate it. I kind of budget for it, so I try to kind of limit myself to £500 a month for everything to do with a hobby. You know, whether that's like books, terrain, minis, anything else. Frankly, and again, it sounds quite conceited, but I could up that level considerably, but I don't want to, because I don't want a hobby that's just like that I'm like a pay pig for, and having to spend like just untold thousands of pounds of it. I'm very, very comfortable spending usually between like £300 and £500 a month or something like that. And you know, I mean, I consider myself very privileged that I can do that, because a lot of people can't. So, you know, I don't take that for granted, for sure. But again, money, key issue for it. But the final issue, and this is the one that I want to discuss today, really, in terms of why Games Workshop, I think, potentially mess up with people like me, is space. Now, space is an obvious one, and I've got all my kind of shelving behind me there, so you can see the space that I've got available. I'm just kind of looking at it on the screen now. Just because of the kind of, you know, the way the camera is, it's way smaller than that actually is, right? Like when I look back at that, that is a lot of hefty shelving back there, and each shelf can fit on like about 110 models or something like that. So, you know, like there's a lot of stuff behind me back there. Now, I have a policy on space, and this is a bit weird and potentially a bit creepy, so bear with me. But I have what would a girl think that I brought home of my hobby space? Right? Like, you know, you start dating a girl, you know, she comes back to your house, you cook for her, whatever. She sees your hobby space, and then she's so freaked out she runs a mile. If you are in that, like, you know, that unfortunate percentile, then you really need to do something about it, because, and I'm using that flippantly, obviously, it's slightly me being slightly cheeky, but it's for anything. It's like, are your friends going to come round and be like, what is that? Now, what I'm talking about with that is people who just have a really like badly managed, filthy, everything's not, you know, incomplete, and it's just a mess, like in terms of hobby space. Obviously for me, and I'm quite proud of this, all that hobby space at the back there is very clean. I use this little table here as well to do my painting on. So, you know, and it's all clean all the time. When I need to kind of paint, I'll get the kind of set out. It's all actually away at the moment in that little white drawer behind me there. But, you know, like, and generally speaking, and again, bit weird to say this, but like, women that I've dated, when I've kind of brought them and they've seen, you know, what I do in time with the hobby space, they'll first look at it and be like, oh no, like they'll give you that look like, oh dear. But then I think when they kind of look, they'll speak to you about it or whatever, or they'll get to kind of, you know, they'll have a look around it, and straight away the questions start coming. And then, you know, they know, oh well, you know, this person can hold down a job and, you know, doesn't live in the grandma's basement. So, you know, like, there are ways that you can do hobby which are wonderfully creative, and that's the space behind me, how I've tried to get that. So it almost just looks like one giant diorama. I also try to kind of limit the space across the house as well. So this kind of, the bit in front of you here that you can't see, this is kind of my work office. And then I've got like the painting station, got like a big like 50-inch television here. So it's very much an office space, right? There's like multiple screens and computers and everything else where I can basically sit and do my day job from here when I'm working from home. I did previously, if you remember, if you've watched other videos, I did have the kind of a couple of tables out here and all the terrain underneath. I'm actually getting an extension built at the back, and part of that is going to be dedicated to like a proper gaming space. So I'm going to put like more shelving up where I can put the terrain, put the tables out. Like I've got 3 of those big tables which fold away, but I keep those out. So I can basically then use this as the kind of display area for it, and then use that bit as the actual play area. And happy to do that. So basically, within my entire house, there is like 2 shelving units and 3 tables. Sorry, yeah, yeah, 2. Well, this is one giant shelving unit, really. I suppose if you want to look at it that way, there'll be another shelving unit, and then there'll be like 3 tables that I can actually fold away and then use that space for other things. That's completely fine for me. Like, I know for a fact I'm not going to have my mum come over to my house and be like, what is... I mean, she would literally go bananas with me. She'd be like, what are you doing? What is wrong with you? But, when she kind of sees it as is, she's like, oh, yeah, how quaint, my funny little son, that kind of thing, which is fine. And space, then, for me, beyond money, beyond time, because I've always got time for the hobby, because it's like meditation for me. I will sit and paint mechs or anything else. Like I just did the Blood Bowl vampire team over the weekend, and I adore it. It's actually my favourite thing in the entire hobby is to paint the minis. So, like those 2 things I will always make, a preference for. But space, I am very, very conservative on. To a point where I've really kind of had to have internal debates about even going up to when the next Kickstarter comes. I'll have about 1,500 mechs and vehicles. That was never my intention. My intention when I started this was to kind of have upwards of about 200 to 300. But now it's obviously, some could say that it's spiraled out of control, but I know as a project manager that it's not going to spiral out of control, because if you look at the collection behind me, there is only one part of that entire collection that isn't painted, and that is this bit above me. So these are all the mechs that I have that are just primed and not painted. Everything else that you see on that shelving is completed. So I kind of manage it. I manage the kind of time expectation. I make sure that I make time for it, that kind of thing. Now, I know I've gone off on a bit of a tangent there, but I suppose that is quite an interesting facet on its volition, is kind of the space factor within the hobby. But Games Workshop now, because they've missed their iron, 2 things have happened over the last couple of months. The first is that Blood Bowl have started to kind of pick up on releases. So we got the Vampire team. They've not released anything in like a year. They did the Amazon team last year. They've now got the Vampire team. And I expect them now over the next year to kind of push on and make the Chaos Dwarf team, and maybe the Slan team, the High Elf team. I'm going to need more space for that. I'm going to need more space for those star players. Also, 2 other things. So I bought the Aliens game from Gale Force 9. Lovely set, by the way. Well worth checking that out if you're an Aliens fan. They've just kind of recommissioned it all, so it's quite easy to get at the moment. Painted all that up, although it's not a massive set. That takes a bit of space. The big thing, though, is that, and I was really I've had like a philosophical breakdown over the last week trying to kind of come to terms with this, but I have decided to sell my old Hero Quest game. Even saying that makes me feel slightly sick. I'm going to tell you why. I know I'm going off on tangents here, but I think some of you like the tangents. So, it's whatever. If you don't, then tough. I'm going to tell you anyway. So I love Hero Quest. I love old Hero Quest. I had an old version of the game, and I had like all the expansion packs, apart from the 2 that were released in the US. Those I've never been able to get. I don't think they're even... you can never find them on eBay or anything, so I just think that they were just on limited release and you can't get them. But as far as possible, I had as much as you could get on the old Hero Quest game. And I'd spent a lot of time... It's one of the first things I did when I got back into the hobby, was basically just complete it all. So I had like missing dice and missing cards, stuff like that. That's a wonderful thing about eBay. You can just go on there and buy that treasure card that you're missing or anything else. So did all that, got it all, played it all through. Actually, over the course of a year when I was back up in Yorkshire, there was a couple of guys that I played it all through with and really enjoyed it. now though, what happened? The new Hasbro, I think it's Hasbro. They've basically commissioned a new Hero Quest game, and I bought the expansions, which were the same expansions. I can't remember what they're called off the top of my head. The ones like the Mirror and the Mage, or the Mage and the Mirror, something like that. And then there's one like the Winter one that's done in Frost, that's got like the big Frost giant in it. They were kind of reissues of the games that I couldn't get. Those expansion packs that that were in the US but didn't appear over here. So my intention was to like, okay, I'll just buy them, paint them up, and then they can be the final piece of the puzzle. A few weeks ago though, and I've just recently moved down to Nottingham, obviously, so I don't have a big like network down here in terms of gaming. But I was speaking to a guy pretty locally who's got like a kid who's like about 9 years old, and we were kind of talking about, when I've got my extension done next year in the new hobby space. I said, you can come around with your boy and we can, like roll some dice. And he was saying then, he was kind of like, he said, because he knows I have Hero Quest. And I was like, was kind of thinking, this kid's never been into the hobby before. His dad is, but he isn't, the boy isn't. And the old Games Workshop Hero Quest game, as much as I love it, it is very, very dated. The models, the miniatures are very dated. I know people will make an argument that's not the case. I just look at the new Hasbro set though, and I think it's amazing. Like I've got the, I've got like 2 or 3 of the expansion packs, maybe two. It'll be 2, and I just like. Now it all looks different, right? Because all the new stuff is on new bases, but the models are really nice, and the furniture's much more chunky, and I'm just like, do you know what? I'm just going to bite my bullet and get the new Hero Quest, and I'm going to sell my old Hero Quest because I'm sure there is someone out there that would love it and appreciate it. I can get quite a bit of money for that old set because the things like Wizards of Morkart, they ain't cheap, right? Like these are not things that are like readily available. So that's all shipping off. Literally this week we'll be buying all the new Hero Quest stuff. So it's still all in print. So like the main game, Keller's Keep and Return of the Witch Lord. I'll be getting all that. I've got the rest. I've got everything else that they've done, and then I'll be kind of dedicating a space on that shelf to Hero Quest. Previously, there was a space dedicated to Epic, but to Hero Quest, but it was much smaller than the new set will be because the old miniatures were just on little square bases and it only took up a little bit of space, on the display. Whereas the new one, the models are much more like flailing all over the place, and they've got these like big, like there's like the big ice giant, which is huge. It's like I think one of the biggest miniatures that I own. It's like as big as the old Space Crusade dreadnoughts. So. I've got to dedicate more space to that. Now, why I'm bringing all that up, that is 3 things that have happened since the summer. So that's over a 4 or 5 month period since it got announced that Legion Imperialis was getting done. I don't now think I have space to fit that in without buying more shelving. And it's something I am desperate to not do, right? Like I could easily go and buy one of these shelving units for whatever they cost, or 80 quid or whatever. But I don't want to do that. I want this room to be like a serviceable, proper place where I can have like a proper desk space. And I've got like the little seat back there that it's like a little futon thing that pulls out into a bed if I've got, I've got like spare bedrooms in the house, but this is just like my emergency if I've got like several people staying over or whatever. I don't want to negate that, put up more shelving so that I can then get, Epic. And that's where I think Games Workshop are really kind of, with people like me on that kind of high disposable income level, if you miss the iron with us, if the iron isn't hot, you just lose out. And I will go and look at everything that I've said there. 2 out of 3 of those are not Games Workshop products. So Blood Bowl is. Gale Force 9 did the Alien games, and Hasbro do the new Hero Quest. So for me, I'm like, this is frustrating. If I would have had that already, I would have had to foreplan from it. I probably wouldn't have pulled the trigger on the Hero Quest decision. But I have done. And, if I can't now I might be able to work it in. I might be able to kind of factor it in and give up one of the, like half of the shelving or something like that to the new Epic set. But you know, at the moment, I'm just like, I can't guarantee that. I don't know if it's going to happen. I probably will wait. I probably won't buy it on release now, which is a problem. Again, because other things will start to fill that vacuum. So, yeah, it's something where I think Games Workshop's Marcoms are usually really quite good. You know, they've got like the Warhammer community page. They do a lot of like great photography, obviously, and they've got like they do like videos. But I just think that giving like not it's not empty promises. I'm not. I mean, things happen, right? There are issues with shipping and there are issues with printing and everything else. There's no heat on that front. It's just the why announce it in July with like that really tight 3 month window to get it out, and now it's probably going to be like a December release. Is it going to be a release as well where people have already spent their money on things that they're going to get for Christmas or buy for gifts and everything else? So I just look at it like, oh, guys, you've just like, you know, and I really want it. I absolutely really want it. And I'm pretty sure that at some juncture I will get it. But then I start to think about like the limited release cycle that Games Workshop have, which is something we just don't have with BattleTech at the moment. You know, like every time I go to a hobby store, I see a game of Armoured Combat on the shelf. I see the Clan Invasion box set. You know, there's the local hobby store that I use in Nottingham, which is fantastic, called Element Games. So if you're down here, check that out. I think they've got stores in like Sheffield as well. They've got like an entire shelf space dedicated to BattleTech. So I don't necessarily need to even buy like Force Packs online anymore. They've got maybe like, there was at least like 30 to 40 in there when I last went in. You know, and they've got like the books, they've got like the Alpha Strike book, and it's always going to be there, right? Like we know now that the retail for BattleTech is sorted. This is the golden age of it. Am I going to? They're going to do a limited release on Epic or Legion Imperialis, and then I can't get it or have to get it scalped off eBay and stuff like that. Just really puts me off. So again, again, this feels a bit of a puerile video. It feels a bit immature. It's basically me just saying like, whine, whine, whine. I haven't got what I wanted. And yeah, there is an element to that to it, but I'm just kind of doing it from a market research point of view of how much pressure I put myself under on the space front. I think for most people it's going to be the money front, potentially the time front as well. But for me, it is the space. And if I am constantly having to buy, you know, I want things that they're releasing. And look at the space at the back. You can see behind me now there's an empty shelf here, and there's an empty shelf. I can't point at that. You can see it behind me there, and then there's one above me here. I can never do this. It's like the camera just is. Yeah, there it is. That's the other shelf. So there's like 3 spaces, and that real estate is going quickly, and I ain't getting any more. Right? I think as someone who's like had a dream of having a collection like this since I was a child, and now I'm able to fulfill it, that's it done for me. I know for a fact, like from the BattleTech standpoint, every force that I'm getting now, I'm getting every clan that I ever wanted. I'm getting every Inner Sphere force that I wanted. I'm going to have the Dusk Haunters Regiment. I've got the entire Blood Bowl collection with every single team that they've ever done on the 2nd edition. You know, I've got first iteration Kill Team, which I still love and play quite a bit. So I don't need any more than that. Like I will now be able to enjoy that well into my middle age, and you know, can retire my paint set, and you know, well, I probably won't. The only thing that I'll probably keep collecting after that will be the terrain, and probably will expand that quite a bit. But in terms of games, not so much. You know, I think I've had that window now from being like 36 to maybe in my early 40s, and that will be it for me. At that juncture, I'll be like, done. I think as well, just in terms of like how my career is looking, I envisage a point over the next 3 to 5 years where I am just going to run out of time to do hobby. I think at the moment I'm still in the kind of sacred space where I can still manage it, but eventually that is going to change. And all my hobby time at that point, into my mid-40s, I'm hoping I can just dedicate that to playing the games. Anyway, I'll leave it there. So there you are. That was a lot to fit in. 35 minutes. I've got like an entire life story in there, really, and obviously the new news on Legions Imperialis. If we hear any more news on it, I will do videos on it. I do think I know I am a BattleTech channel, and it can seem a little bit heretical to do 40k stuff on here or 30k stuff, but they are a challenger to BattleTech, and I think that is absolutely, there is a remit. Or you know, there's a reason for me to kind of cover that. Anyway, I will thank you very much for watching, and I will hopefully catch you again next time.